How does a teacher handle a student who wants an immediate answer? What is a way to let them know if they are right or wrong without capping their thinking?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Inquiry Zone. My name is Douglas Hunnings, and I am the Director of the Primary STEM Education here at ETHOS Innovation Center.
And I'm John Taylor, the Director of STEM Education here at ETHOS also, and we have a very special guest with us today. Again, got to have her back.
Yeah. Thank you for having me back. My name is Sally Baltenheimer, and I am a STEM educator with ETHOS.
Awesome. And Sally, I've heard that you have another good question for us this week, and love to know what it is.
Yes, here is the question. How does a teacher handle a student who wants an immediate answer? What is a way to let them know if they are right or wrong without capping their thinking?
Well, don't you just tell them what it is and tell them to sit down and shut up?
No.
No. Oh, what a great question. So what do you think, Sally?
Well, I think some of it is the same, like it's a shift in your mindset as a teacher of the type of classroom that you're going to run, where you're trying to just create a culture of questions and wondering versus just like a lecture format where it's like you have all the answers. So if you can create that mindset within your students, then they'll understand that there's certain things that they won't understand right now, or that you'll understand later, or through further testing or investigation or observation, you might be able to get an answer. So if you can create that mindset, that it will free the students from that pressure that they feel that they have to know, like right now too.
Sure.
And I'll say this actually reminds me of a time for me as a student in college in my science methods course. I was always in college. I like to try to get as much done by mid-semester, my midterm, my work, so I could, not be as stressed at the end. And I remember in my science methods course, I had a professor. She was telling us all our assignments. I started working ahead, and I asked her a question about something we haven't learned yet in class, because I want to know the answer so I could complete the assignment. And she told me to stop and wait because we're not ready to discuss that. And that stuck with me, because then as a classroom teacher, I had students who would want an immediate answer, and I referred back to that to help them to take a deep breath and wait, and the time will come when it's appropriate for you to learn it.
It's good to learn patience.
Oh my goodness.
That's so much of
something
life.
that stuck with me.
Yeah,
that's huge. Other thing too, I think as teachers, we need to recognize what I read something that's about affirmation of the student. I read that into it. And I do, the point would be that we think that the students want the answer, and I think maybe they do, but it is worthwhile to affirm the question. So, I mean, I remember teachers saying, "Oh, that's such a great question. Oh, how'd you come up with that?" They didn't answer the question, but they affirmed the value of the question to the kid. And a lot of times that's enough for them to keep wondering. We think like, oh, we have to have the answer. And maybe that's not always the right response. When kids are asking questions, well, that's a great question. That's a great question. Boy, you folks have such awesome questions. Hey, let's write these down somewhere before we lose them. And maybe we'll have a chance to discuss some of these this year as we get through it. Just a different mindset of, I'm the expert, I've got the answers, here's what it is, to let's value the fact that you asked a question.
And I think a lot of times what you said, the student just wants to be heard. They just want to know and be acknowledged that they have that question. And for some of my kids, that's like, especially some who may struggle a little bit more in science, just knowing that I said, wow, I really appreciate the question. Or, wow, that was a great question you came up with. I mean, for some, they were just excited, and that made their day, and then they just continued on in the lesson.
Sure. And sometimes
and I was thinking too, John, about like you had said about your like hypothesis. Like sometimes it's not possible for you to prove that the hypothesis like is true or whatever, but you could do the opposite. Like, you might be like, I wanted to prove that, whatever, could something float? I can't think of a good example. Maybe you guys can help us think of an example, but you can't prove that, but you can prove that it sunk. So you're like, well, I learned that, this thing sunk. I thought it was going to float, but it sunk. So, I didn't, you know what I'm talking about that. You
Yeah,
said that
the
to
null
me.
hypothesis, you turn it around. It's a great approach.
Mm-hmm. So you did learn something. It wasn't what you expected to learn.
Yeah,
But
so
you
it's
still learned
important to
something.
know what doesn't, was it no, it was Einstein, it was Edison, right? With the light bulb, it says 1,000 things that he figured out, 1,000 things which don't work well.
Right.
And how important that is as we move, and light bulbs have changed so much. We're in LEDs now, right? It is so important not just to know what does work, but what doesn't work. And I'm trying not to get off on a tangent too much with this one, but I remember spending weeks on an experiment in college, and and when I finally, what it was I had a switch that was off. That was it. Everything else I was doing was right. And I really was frustrated. And I said something to the professor, and he reprimanded me personally there one-on-one, because he says, have you not learned anything the last few weeks? And it was an eye-opening moment that it's the journey towards those answers. We have so many more questions and answers we deal with. And that's the thing for our kids too. And then if we're not answering the questions, if it's a good question, they're going to talk to their buds about it, and the he's and she's out there are going to have their little conversations and try to come up with their own resolution of what this is, which is a valuable skill, I think, also.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. It was an awesome question. And reminder, if you have questions, look at the bottom of the screen and send those to us so we can discuss those. Big thank you to our special guest, Sally. Thank you for being with us today.
Yes, Sally, thank you for coming
You're
back.
welcome. Thanks for having me.
And join us again on the next episode of the Inquiry Zone.
We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
ETHOS offers the Inquiry Zone professional development to schools. Helping to ensure a robust, fun, and cross-curricular approach to science is supported in all grades. Please contact us at contact@ethosinc.org.
All right, I think we're ready.
Yeah, actually, I recorded all that off. That was pretty good. We almost could just use that.
Okay. Use your editing skills, then we can go.
Right.
I could. You mean, what do you want to do? We kind of went.
Your
round
call.
and round.
Editing sounds like more work to me than just to re-record it, but that's me.
Well, it's up.
We could
it won't take long.
just do the intro and then the goodbye.
I'm okay with that,
It's
actually.
up to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll do an intro and say, Sally, you got a question? If you can read off that question.
Okay.
And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use you in the very beginning of the videos to introduce the questions each time. So it'll work out nice.
Sounds great.
Okay. So Douglas, why don't you kick off this time?
All right, will do.
And Doug.
Hello.
Wasn't so bad, was it?
No, I almost just hung up though, as we're like, bye.
Oh.
Hang up.
That's
You
good.
guys convinced me.